Hello everyone, I'm Daniel, and today I'm just going to talk to you about how I set up my Tabletop Simulator mod settings to make it look like what you're seeing here on the screen. A lot of people ask me in the comments about how did I make this, that, or the other work, because there are a few things here that are different from the base mod that you can get online. But notably, this is not a overall tutorial of the mod. I'm just going to talk to you about how I make things look like this. Overall, my philosophy is I want everything on one screen. I don't want to move the camera around a little bit or even a lot because I tend to get a little bit of motion sickness if I see a video where the camera is jumping around all over the place. And I'm sure that happens to some of you. And I just prefer to have everything in one view. So I have moved some things around so everything's right here, which is perfect for two-handed solo, which of course is the way I play on the channel when I'm playing just me. And I think this works for two-player in general too. But yeah, this is basically how do I set up my two-handed solo mod. Okay, so I really don't like how the camera moves around so much so that while you can set the cameras in Tabletop Simulator, which I've done here, the controls, by the way, are for Control 1 will set a camera, and then Shift 1 will move back to it. You can move your camera around and save it to how you like it. But I actually really hate it when you right click and rotate the table. I have turned that functionality off. I have gotten rid of that that key. I'll show you, by the way, you've noticed that the overlay is gone too. The keys for your, I believe are under, nope, where are they? They're under configuration, under controls. And I've changed a number of things here, as you'll see, but the rotate, I've just moved to a, not rotate the card, but rotate the camera I've moved it to backslash. I believe usually this camera hold rotate is right click, but it's just so easy when you are doing things like making your resource counter go up or down to accidentally right click and then move the table all around. So now I can right click and move my cursor and nothing happens. I think that's a good change. I would recommend it for most people because you don't really need to move or rotate the camera around. And I still can if I need to. It's just once it gets askew, it's kind of awful. So we can go back to our normal camera viewpoint. So that's my overall philosophy. Okay, the two most common questions I get. One is, how did I get this picture-in-picture thing happening? Since, again, I don't move the camera around, but the stuff is up here. How did I make this happen? It's really, really easy. All you do is right-click anywhere on the screen. You get this picture-in-picture button. It's going to pop up this one, but if it's not there, you can move around and you can see this little window that shows up. You can resize it as much as you want. Make it like this, or I like it down here. And what you do is you make your camera look like what you want. So I zoom in here using the wheel as much as I can. Sometimes I need to switch over to like first person mode, which is also here, like camera mode to first person. Makes you able to move the camera a little bit closer if you can't get as close as I'm doing here. And then you click on this button here that says lock to player view. And that's it. You can move around and go back to our original camera, and this stays as is. This is really cool because you can do stuff with the encounter deck by just moving your hand up here. I can just take the top card like this and put it back, no problem. The only problem is you cannot click buttons that are up here. So for example, if I were to include this clue counter as part of my picture-in-picture, let's get rid of this one, add in a new one, like this. I can't click on this master clue counter anymore. So usually you can click on it like right here. It will remove all of your clues and put them in the trash. Of course, there aren't any clues. You can't actually click on anything. You can just pick up things, but buttons you cannot interact with in the picture-in-picture. That's a TTS problem. That is not a mod problem. So there you go. Let's just go back and put this to where I like it. Something like this. I'd like to zoom in and show the discard pile as well as the encounter deck. One consequence, by the way, of not being able to click on buttons, if there ever happens to be buttons up here in the Mythos area, which there might be in the future, I'm using somewhere between version 3.4 and 3.5, by the way. I've made this little button here that shuffles the encounter deck discard pile back into the encounter deck. Probably in a future version, you're going to see it up here, but for right now, I needed to put it down here where I can still click on it. So there you go. That's the most common thing that people have told me that they want to know about. The other thing that people ask is about how did I get the campaign guide to show up on the screen like so? Well, this is not part of Tabletop Simulator at all. This is part of the OBS software that records things, can record things from other windows. What we're looking at here is a screen grab from the ArkhamCards app. This app is available on Android and iOS, and it's really, really good for keeping track of your campaigns. How did I get it onto the PC? I didn't. This is an Android emulator called BlueStacks, and it's just another application running on my computer, and you can see it here. So I'm always just alt-tabbing over and scrolling through so you can see what's going on. But this is literally just an Android emulator that is running here. Great, great app. I recommend using it. The only problem with using it with TTS is that if you use it with other people, they cannot see this unless you share your screen somehow or something else. So that I prefer to show this on screen because, as you might know, the campaign guides up here are like really hard to see. Like all of the text is super small, and especially with the new versions of the campaign guides that are, look at all that text, right? They are more like a piece of paper in terms of size instead of more of a square. The old ones were more of a square and zoomed in much more nicely onto TTS. There's not really a way around that when you do the Alt zoom. By the way, that's how I do that. I hold down Alt. I mean, you can do the magnifying glass and zoom in, but that's like not great, right? You could also make the guide huge, like do this. I've seen some people do this, and then you zoom in, and I guess you can read it that way. I'd rather just use the app, and it's worked out really well so far. Okay, going back to our normal camera. Those are the two most common things that I hear questions about. The next thing I think I'd like to do is just go to the kind of base version and show you how to build what I have here, as well as some additional functionality about how you should play two-handed solo. So 1 second. Okay, normally when you open up TTS, it looks something like this, right? You'll notice that the this thing is still up here, right? So the picture-in-picture window will always follow you. When you open a new TTS session, it'll still be there. Sorry, it will not be there, but if you open up a new save game, it will still be there. So you wouldn't see that when you normally open up the mod. You have to do that manually. So here's the tutorial panel. If you haven't gone through the tutorial, you probably should. There's some good stuff there. But we'll delete it for now. I'm going to quickly load in those decks. There they are. So I want them to be there so you can see a few things with the decks as well. But the first thing to know about when you are playing two-handed solo is what do you do in order to see what is in the hand of the other investigator. So by default, let's see if it's here, under hands, enable is checked and then hiding is default. So what that means is that if I'm just sitting in one seat, which I'm doing here in the white seat, I can see everything here. If I draw 5 cards, they're all here. And by the way, you might not see this just down here. You might have H on, which shows you the cards at the bottom of your screen. So the H button will get rid of that if you just want to look at only, if you don't want to look at only yours, you want to look at everyone's. Now, if I try to draw cards over on Nathaniel, if I use the same way to draw cards, right, if I draw 5, they're going to go over to the white hand, which is not what we want. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more here, kind of give you the point of why I like to zoom in. We don't want that, right? So how do we make sure they go into Nathaniel's hand? Well, the first thing you can do is you can just drag the top card and place it in the hand. And then you can't see anything. Well, part of the problem is that it is not face up. But even if I put it in here, the card will be hidden. All right, so let's fix that problem. We go up to Options. We go up to Hands. We go to Enable, we want on here, but Hiding, we want to be Disable. And now I can see Nathaniel's hand. Now, there's another option here that people do. There's actually basically 2 options. One is that people might change their color to the GM color. That's the black one. And this no matter what, allows you to see everyone's hands. Just to make sure that's obvious, we'll go to hands here. You can see that default is on. I can still see hands from other players. That's really good, except for a lot of encounter cards that are on the playmat. You will be able to see the name of the card. So for example, if I have even this face down here, it'll tell me that this is Get Over Here level 2. That's not ideal, right? Especially for scenarios that have face down cards and you're not supposed to know what they are. Swarm cards, another example. So my recommendation is to not go into the GM mode, but to do what I'm suggesting, sit in the white seat or orange seat if you're just doing two-handed, and make sure hands is disabled. Then you can see everything in the other hand. Okay, back to the original problem. How do I draw cards? Again, you can just do this and then press F to flip. That's okay. But another thing you can do is go to the options menu and click this Show Draw One button. And there's this now button here that we can't see that well, but I'll zoom in. Underneath the Upkeep button, there is a Draw One button, and you can click that to just draw single cards at a time. Over on whichever player you're seated at, you can still, draw more than one at once by pressing the number key on your keyboard, and that draws multiple, but you can't ever do that over here. If you do that over here again, it'll just draw to your own hand, and that's not what you want. So you have to kind of get used to that and draw using this Draw One button, or drag and flip, which is a little bit less good. Let's look at some other things that are in this options menu that I like to make sure I enable. First, I want to enable the hand helper. That's down here. And this gets us this cool counter that says how many cards are in my hand. You be careful, there's a little button there for Dream Enhancing Serum, a card that counts cards in your hand differently. But normally when you're just moving around here, you can see Jenny here has 8 cards in hand, Nathaniel has 5. You don't need to just count everything in your hand. There's also a button at the bottom to click that says discard a random card. Way better than any other method that I've seen. You just click the button and it'll tell you white randomly discarded card 4 out of 8. It's just one of the cards in your hand. Okay. That is that much. Now, how about getting rid of the stuff that is over here? Well, it probably in the future will be in this options menu, but if it's not there, at the moment, and again 3.4-ish, it is sitting in one of the, that's something else, one of the accessories in this bucket to the right. So it is the playmat hider. So this thing, you just click on which player mat you want to show or hide. So generally with two-handed solo, you're playing with the white and orange playmats. This is orange. The place where I'm sitting is white. So if I click on this one, this is playmat 4, then it will go away. Same thing with the green one. We zoom out, we'll see that this one is gone. This is a good moment to also say that this other stuff is still going to be sitting here, and at the moment the buttons are actually kind of here too, and the tokens are just, I think they're just sitting below the table, so you can't exactly see them, but they're still there. This is a good moment to say, look, you can delete things that you don't need. I don't need the green hand helper. Let's just delete it. So you can right click this and go to delete. This is a locked object, so it's hard to move around. If I did want to move it, or any of the other ones, I can unlock it and then move it around as I want, and then put it in the trash and do whatever I want to actually get rid of it. True with all of these things too. I don't need them. They are more there for the other players, right? If we're just playing with 2, then why do we need all of this clutter on our screen? Okay, take some time to do all that. Same thing, the victory display. You've noticed that I've moved it. I don't like it up there. I want to see it, so I've put it down over here, and I can lock it again. No problem. We'll take a look at the victory display again in a little bit. The last thing I think to show from the options menu is the resource spawner. So this is the resource and like supplies and all that. There's a button for if I want to use clickable resource tokens. So what are we talking about here? If you have a card with, move this back, let's say flashlight. It has supplies. So in the print version of the game, right, in paper, you just use resource tokens. If I put this down in Tabletop Simulator with this version, it's going to spawn automatically with 3 supplies, and they look like this. So look like little suitcases, I guess. And this is all very well and good if you like those new tokens. I believe there's also ones for ammo. If we look at Jenny's twin, where are they? Here, twin 45s. This will spawn another different kind of resource token. Oh no, it won't, because it depends on how much ammo I put on. Okay, we'll come back to that. So if I want to go back to the old kind of tokens that look just like this, zoom in here since this is what we're really looking at, you can't. What you can do instead is you can click on options and go to use clickable resource tokens and choose enabled. And this is going to give you something different. Let's get rid of all of these. We spawn this again, and it's going to give us just a single token here that we can click up and down to say how many supplies are on our flashlight. I prefer this. It's just a personal preference. Other people might like the cool new tokens. The old tokens, though, you can't really use. There's a third option here, by the way, which is they call Chef's Selection. And what this does is assets that have no uses on them will come in with, I believe, 0 uses on one of those clickable ones. So I think we can put that in. I'll show you in a second. Okay, I've got the search a card helper. This thing is in the upper left corner of the table, by the way, and you can unlock it and move it somewhere closer. So if I, for example, put in the Hawkeye folding camera and put that down, it should spawn with 0 uses, just like that. Okay, because this doesn't have any starting uses, so it just is going to give you a 0 that you can start clicking on to add evidence to. That's pretty cool. I like that version, but actually I always just pick the use clickable resource tokens, period. Personal preference. Okay. I think that is about it for things from that sidebar. There's more to explore if you haven't looked at it. What else would I like to show you? So kind of going with the whole moving things around the table, clearly, as you've seen before, I've moved the act and agenda over here. I'm going to load a scenario in so I can show you how to do that, as well as putting spawn or snap points in. Okay, here is the secret name. If I want to move all this stuff down, what I'm going to have to do is just pick up, drag, and move it where I want. Now, there are some spawn points already here. Snap points, not spawn points. You'll notice whenever there's like a little hover over, there's like a ghost version underneath. That means there's some kind of a snap point. If you click on this green button over here, it'll show you all the places where things might snap to, and you also can add your own. So all of these little buckets of counters that I got rid of, I can just get rid of them manually, or I can move them around if I want to put the act and agenda in a particular place. This is in practice very, very difficult to get them to line up properly. If you know some scripting, you can go in and edit this file to add some additional snap points in that are lining up exactly how they should be. Otherwise, you are going to get a little bit of a misalignment, and that might annoy you, or maybe not. Okay, I've added some snap points in, I've gotten rid of some other stuff, so I can move the agenda here and the act over here. That's, as you can see, not perfect, but at least it's closer to where I would be in my normal camera setup. Now, what about the doom and the clues? These are perfectly fine to move around. You can just unlock them and move them wherever you'd like. They function just the same. I will note that moving the agenda and act deck may have some consequences for some other scripting functionality. So move at your own risk, or figure out how to, sometimes the lock isn't really accurate, or, you know, go and edit the files yourself to make sure it's looking for the agenda in the right place. It's not that hard to do if you know your way around some scripting. Anyway, this is just a haphazard way of doing this, and now you can still click on the Doom counter and whatnot, and it works perfectly fine. All these buttons work fine. This other Doom in play counter will still recognize things. Right. Okay. So that's that. You can lock these again. I recommend that so you don't accidentally move them around. Again, right click, toggles, lock. What else? I like to copy the scenario reference card and put it here and there, just so it's easier to see things. And I think that's pretty much it for the setup. The last thing I think also you might have noticed is I put in some other tokens for the autofail and elder sign, and those are all sitting in that cool little fan-made accessories bucket over here as well. So you can take these out, change the size of them, make them really big, copy them, do whatever you want to make it look like what you'd like. The other thing I do also to make things kind of show up in frame a little bit better is I move the location of the hands just so they're a little bit closer to the playmat, but not too much. So here you can change this position. I think it's the Z position that's going to move it up, but you can also drag this to move it up a little bit. No, it's the X position. Okay. Not too far, but I like to move it up just a little bit so it's easier to see, and then you can change that to be literally the same position as this one. So negative 64.15. Nope, that's the wrong that's the wrong thing I touched. So this is negative 55. Again, negative 64.15. It's very easy to make some mistakes, but it is kind of fun to see what's going on. You can also get rid of the other two hands if you don't need them anymore, but I'd leave them. This way I can zoom in just a little bit more and still see all of my hand. Last thing that's kind of a just to clear out the room a little bit, I like to be able to see all of the playmat, and I do end up moving locations a little bit closer to the bottom of the playmat, but you also can turn off the overlay. So if you press Control and some of the F buttons, then some of these things will go away. So for example, if you go Control F1, the thing on the left goes away. You can bring it back by pressing the same button. F2, it's the one on the top. F3, it's the name in the upper right-hand corner. F4, it's the little edit notes button on the bottom right. F5 is the chat. And F6 is all of them. And I always do that, at least lately, since I learned how to do that trick. Gives you much more space. It looks much cleaner, in my personal opinion. You can bring back, for example, just the chat if you'd like. The chat is very good for things like when did Doom get set on the agenda. If you didn't remember when you pressed that button, it will give you a timestamp, but you do have to turn that on. I think that's in the chat settings. Yeah, timestamps has to be checked for you to see when you did things. But really, I think it's really good. But I'll probably turn it off because otherwise when you do have it on and certain things tell the chat to, certain things in the script tell the chat to do something, it'll pop up, and that's kind of annoying and blocks some of your hand. But you can just hide it and bring it back when you need it. Simple. Okay, I'm going to go back to my original file that you saw earlier. I don't know what happened to Nathaniel's investigator card. Oh, there he is. Just to show you a couple more cool tricks that I like to use when I'm playing the mod. Okay, we're back to have everything set up the way I like it. You've also noticed I've brought the chest of things that are set aside down here too. Everything's lined up very nicely. Cool. So the last thing, let's get rid of the overlay again, actually we need it in a second, is to show off some of the hotkeys in the mod. This is like really not well advertised. I think it'll be better advertised in the future, but there's kind of two versions of hotkeys in the game, and I use both of them quite a bit. So the easiest one, where you don't do anything special, is to look over here at this token spawning reference. I'm going to unlock it and move it over so where we can see it. And this is going to tell us about which of the numpad keys spawn various things. So it's pretty obvious what most of them are, right? 7 is a doom, 8 is a clue, 9 is a resource. Okay, now the thing with the spawning resources is, let's go back to the flashlight example from before. If I want to put, for example, a resource on flashlight, I want to spawn extra uses on it, I can do that with that 9 key and it will spawn the correct type. Now, to do that, I need to, in the options, have gone to use clickable resource tokens disabled. Presumably, that's why you want the special one in the first place. You play your flashlight here, it's going to spawn with the different supplies, right? There they are, very beautiful. And then you press the 9 key on your numpad and it will spawn the correct one, as long as you're hovering over it. If I hover over here, I'll get just the regular resource token. That works for all the different uses like Tony's bounties, evidence, charges, etc. Okay, so these are all pretty straightforward. I think beyond that, the other one that's kind of odd is the 0. That lets you add a line between cards. This is not necessary in the current version of the mod because everything is already connected to each other with the automatic connections. So cool. But if you have a scenario like in Innsmouth where there isn't some automatic connections, it's just based on adjacency, or there's a scenario where it might say, now this is actually connected to some other location, then you can use this 0 numpad hotkey. You can do it with anything, actually. If I want to say that the Streetwise is connected to my Charisma for some reason, what I do is I'm going to select both of them, and I just tap 0 on the key, and it drew a line there. It's not actually connected like these are, so if I move this, it's still a line on the mat, and I can get rid of that by going over to the eraser under the draw menu. I can't see the draw menu because the picture-in-picture is in the way. Let's move that. Yeah, over here we go to erase, and I can just erase lines. So this is like good for connections if you need to. I don't think you ever really want to do what I just did here unless it's for fun. Move this back. Okay, that's everything here. Really good. I also want to tell you that if you want to spawn tokens with multiple states on them, for example, you have a damage token you want to put on an enemy, you can just press 4, it shows up, hooray. And if you want to discard all of these, you can just hit the discard button. They go in the trash. But if you're really quick and press 4 twice, it will increase its number to 2. Let's say you use a weapon, right? 2 damage. How about a 3 damage weapon? Go 3. 1, 2, 3. There you go. You can play around with that and you get the proper one. I think if you press 4 while hovering over it, it will also, just increase. Yeah. The other thing that people do, of course, is you can just hover over an existing one and press the number on your keyboard and it will set it to the right state, all the way up to 50. So 45 damage. There you go. I like spawning though, instead of what you might do is just drag out of this every single time. It's a little bit of a, pardon the pun there, a bit of a drag. Again, all of these, either you can just delete or press the discard button for each of these. Which brings me to the other really important way to look at hotkeys, which are the ones that are listed up in the options menu. And these, many of them are very new, are really, really powerful. Okay, let's go to game keys. So options, game keys, and there's a whole lot of options here that are, some of them are new and may not be in your version quite yet. Some of them are ones I added myself. All of these letters here are my hotkeys. They are set by me. You have to set which ones you want. They are not automatically set in the mod, unlike the numpad ones, which are just there. Those are the numbers for them, always and forever. These you get to set on your own. Problem with these is you have to figure out which of the keys on your keyboard don't already do something else. And if they do, you need to go change what they did in a different menu, the controls menu I showed you earlier. So what do these do? Add Doom to agenda, really cool. I put it for O, and instead of going over here and clicking, just typing O on your keyboard gets you the addition of the agenda, and it tells you that you did that in the chat. It also shows you up on the screen that you did something. So that's really nice if you don't want to go over and click on the button. I mean, honestly, not that big of a deal. The other ones, though, are super powerful. The ones I use the most often are discard object. This is really, really good. You hover over any card, and it will discard that card along with any tokens onto it to the proper location. Did you get Crypt Chill on your flashlight? Boom, it's in the discard pile. That's really cool, right? This works for cards that are in play. Let's say you had a makeshift trap or something. Let's just pretend that's a makeshift trap. You can hit T. Boom, in your discard pile. Again, the letter on your keyboard is going to be whatever you set it to. If it is an enemy, let's find an enemy. So usually if you have an enemy, it's going to be in your threat area and you press the discard button and it goes away. Okay. But if it's over here, you can press the discard button. It goes into the encounter discard pile. Really, really neat. Again, if there's any damage or other tokens on it, I'm just so used to dragging from here. You press T wherever it is, boom, it's gone. Really neat. If the card is in your hand, it's gone. If your card is in someone else's hand, it's gone. So this is really, really powerful and will save you a lot of time. And as part of the reason why I don't have to move my camera around, I can just press these hotkeys. This works for tokens themselves. Can go into the discard pile. You just hover over it. It's gone. All of these, if they want to go in the discard pile, I can't just press T. I need to group them first. I didn't group them all together, but I can just hover over and press T. Really, really cool. I can't think of any other ones that are like this. If there's a location, it will get discarded as well, but it'll yell at you a little bit. Like, watch out, a location was discarded. That's not supposed to happen. I can grab it back out and put it out here. Cool. The next important one that's very similar to that, go back to our game keys, is remove a use. So this one I put right next to T, I have it as Y. So if I have a flashlight with 3 supplies on it, I want to spend one. Instead of clicking here, putting it in the trash, I can hover over the card, press Y, and one of them goes into the trash. There goes another one. This is true if you have a stack of clues. Let's spawn a bunch of clues here. And I want to spend 2 clues. Let's say they're all grouped together, because sometimes that happens. I want to spend 2 clues. Y. Off to go into the trash. Really cool functionality. This works for if there's multiple tokens on the flashlight as well. It will search for the uses first. Those will go first, and then it will be random between other kinds of tokens. So that's the current way it works. Yeah, that's, I think, about it for that hotkey. Let's move on to the next one, which is really, really useful, which is taking a clue from a location. So if you've got a location here that has 2 clues on it and you want to say, I discovered a clue because you're there and you spent your flashlight and passed the test, I can hover over the location, press C, that's the one I set. Again, you can set it to whatever you want. I set it to C, and it goes into my clue area and counts it appropriately. That's really great. Perfect, right? Now, what about if you are playing a second investigator? Now, this is where the functionality in the game currently doesn't support anything, because you have to be sitting in a seat for the take clue button to know where to move it to. Now, I went into the mod and changed a few things, and I added a hotkey for the orange playmat. It's really easy. You just copy everything for the take clue from location script and change out, I think, player color to just the orange color. And I set it to V, which is right next to C. So now when I go to a location like, well, let's just put some clues over here. And let's say Nathaniel got a clue, I can just hit V and it goes over to him. Really fast. And no more dragging and accidentally picking up a location. Just hover over it, press the hotkey, you're done. And it usually tries to make a nice stack here, so in that way you can use your Y key to spend a clue. Nice. That's it for take a clue. We did remove a use. There's a couple other ones. There's move card to victory display. So if you have a victory point enemy or otherwise have a reason to put something in the victory display, I set it to N. I hover over the card. Boom, it's in the victory display. It finds an empty slot. Could be anything, right? Could be the flashlight. Could be the locations with victory on them. There it goes, if you're counting them at the end of the scenario, although the victory display does count things in the play area as well that don't have any clues. Really nice hotkey. Last one, not in the mod as of right now, but will be soon, is the discard the top card of a deck. It basically calls the discard function on a single card when you use that one. I've set it to B. B currently also does the blindfold, so I had to move that. But in the Circle Undone, for example, there is a lot of treacheries that say something like discard cards until, or for every point that you fail by, discard a card. So like Centuries of Secrets, for example, this card says test 5 willpower. For each point you fail by, discard the top card of the encounter deck. If a Curse Treachery is discarded, you deal direct damage to your investigator and to your allies. So I can say I failed by 4. I'm hovering over the deck. I press the hotkey B 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. Of course, you can just go over here and look to see what they were. I know that that first one was indeed a curse. Okay, that works for the encounter deck. It works for the player deck as well. If you're playing the Dunwich Legacy, that asks you to say discard 3 cards. 1, 2, 3. Really quick, really nice functionality. I personally think most campaigns have something that discards cards on top of decks for like spawning an enemy or something like that. Let's see if there's anything else in the game keys. If you're playing, for example, a investigator that cares about where Bless and Curse tokens are, I've set that to L. I don't know why L, but I did. Probably good for the new Kohaku investigator who cares about how many are left in the bag. This just prints in up here where are the curse tokens. So if I add some blessed tokens here, it'll tell me 2 of them are in the bag. Okay, there's also some other ones you might want to explore here for Wendy, for doing upkeep. This is for parallel Wendy, not for regular Wendy. For doing upkeep, I have not set anything for those since I generally like to do upkeep manually, but you could set a hotkey. I love the hotkeys. I feel like they have changed my experience for the better so much. There's so much I can do without having to move the camera around and lose track of what's going on. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I really highly value seeing everything at once, seeing the whole table, seeing where all of the enemies are, where things are moving around. And I hope that this video has helped you kind of see some of the really cool things that you can do when you play with the mod, especially in 2-player or 2-handed solo.